Hello out there and welcome to the very first video in what I hope will be many in the series Red vs Green. I am RJade, formerly from the channel RJadia, and I'm representing green, as you can see. And this is going out to my good friend Lord Reverend Tony T-Dog Newton, who is going to represent red in this. Now, this format, let me say straight up, is completely stolen 100% from the Super Carlin brothers. So if you want to check out much more professional quality videos than what we have to offer, check them out. I'll put the link in the little description down there. But here we go.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by RJ Productions and Fish Entertainment Inc. GHOTI, with new way to spell fish. It's tonight's show, Red vs Green.
How it works. So, my friend Tony gave me a bit of a question to make something up creatively about it, and that statement was my hero. I'm gonna have a little rant about the idea of my hero. Then at the end of my video, I'm gonna ask him a question. He's gonna listen to my question, he's gonna then make a video about that, and at the end of his video, ask me another related question. And back and forth we go, hopefully releasing one every fortnight. So that's once a month for us, once a fortnight for you guys at home. By all means, weigh in on these conversations down using the comment section below. Don't be a troll. No one likes a troll, right? Right, so the statement I was given was my hero. Very generic, very open-ended statement. But you know what, I'm going to take this a step further. I'm going to go beyond that. I'm going to say, who are the role models? And are there any good role models these days? Are the role models that I grew up with particularly good? So who am I? So firstly, I'm a big nerd, right? I grew up on a diet of science fiction, Ninja Turtles and Star Wars, Back to the Future, these things, Batman, and I grew up loving them, right? But as you'll see, I don't know that they're great role models. I don't know that they were really good ones for me. But I grew up loving them nonetheless, and I learned a lot of lessons through them. I specialize in English studies, which is like literature, specifically pop culture and creative writing. And I have a background in social sciences as well, so sociology and psychotherapy, and you'll see how that influences me. There's a bit of a problem with our role models today, I think, because I've grown up loving all these things, and I thought, I want to encourage the kids around me, like my niece, to get involved in the nerd culture that I've loved and adored since I was a little kid. But something that I've discovered is that the things that I grew up with, which when I was young they were kids shows, they aren't for kids anymore. In fact, I question really what messages they've always been sending. So let's start with the biggest issue that I think a lot of parents have, and that is that violence is everywhere, right? We don't want our kids to be violent. We see violence everywhere we turn. It's in every kind of media, whether it be books, comic books, videos, movies. Every story seems to have some kind of a physical confrontation which results in violence. It's very difficult to find one which does not have that. So, some examples that I have here is, I was looking for things for my niece that I wanted to show her, bring her into the nerd fold, as it were. And I thought, what would be really good is she loves books, I'll get her some comic books. So, my niece was born roughly about the same time that the New 52 universe came out, right, for DC Comics. I grew up loving DC Comics, that's a whole other conversation, Marvel vs. DC. That's not what I'm here to talk about, that's a whole different video. But, the comics that I thought would be excellent to start showing my niece, turned out that they're just, to keep her up to date, they're too violent. And I think especially with this change in the New 52 universe, all of a sudden, it's taking it up another notch. It's dialing it up to 11 with these sorts of things. And I bought her a DVD of Wonder Woman. I thought, what better role model is there than Wonder Woman? And the whole first scene of it is, the Amazons going to war with like these centaurs and getting destroyed by arrows and things like that. It was really brutal. The same is true for the comic book, right? And just very graphic violence. So I thought that's not something that we can go with. The same is true for pretty much all of those new titles that are coming out. So I've had to go back back to the older stuff. I took her along to a comic shop and got her to pick her own hero. She chose Iron Man, which is pretty good. And I've been buying her older versions, right? The same is true for Supergirl. She wanted Supergirl stuff, but I couldn't get her the new stuff because it's just way too violent and way too sexual, which we'll talk about later, right? Star Wars. So I have a colleague at work who loves, her kid loves the Star Wars movies, but they're so violent. Good versus evil, which is basic, but it's you look at things like the Clone Wars, which is an animated series, which you'd think would be reasonably okay, but it's all about this fighting. And fair enough, they're fighting robots, but does that really make a difference? You know, when these kids play, they're not just playing, they're not playing against robots, they'll be playing against their friends, right? You know, and even I look back on my past, Back to the Future, excellent example, even that, something which is seemingly innocuous to an adult and tamed by most standards, has a fair amount of violence as the resolution of the plot. Right? I put it to you that there are no texts these days, as an English teacher would say, that aren't violent, right? And whether that's a discussion about our human nature, whether that's a discussion about who we are as a society, or whether that's just because we're lazy plot writers and trying to cram everything into a 30-minute block. And I think it's getting worse. I think that as we go on, things are getting more violent. You look at the sorts of TV shows that are coming out now. You've got things like Game of Thrones, Dexter. They're really pushing this violence to the edge. They're really pushing it across. And the same is true for the comics. The same is true for the games that we play. It's very difficult to find family-friendly computer games, right? I grew up with Sonic. The games were very simple, but they were also significantly less violent. Well, at least they seem to be, compared to the much more graphic violence that we're seeing in modern games. So, to bring us back to the role models, how can we look up to violent people who use violence to solve their problems? How is that a good role model? Is that the kind of person that we want to be considering a hero, someone who uses violence to solve their problems? Is that really the society that we want? Are those the people that we should be admiring? I ask you that. Sexuality is just as prevalent, right? And I think that this goes just beyond the overt sort of sexuality that you see on a day-to-day basis in the media and everything like that. People are very quick to point their fingers at things like advertisements and the news and everything where, oh look, scantily clad women, etc., etc. I think it goes beyond that. It's not just about the sexuality, but it's how you respond to a relationship, right? And I think that that's also something that we need to consider if we're talking about role models and heroes. Do they represent someone who we can look up to? Look at your heroes. Are they someone who is going to model for you a way to build solid relationships with the people around you? I don't think that most of them will. There's a lot of talk in the sociology circles about Disneyfication, right? This is where you're toning everything down to black and white. Everything is about finding your true love and the ideal role models, etc., etc. And since Disney has sort of been the main role model for young women, especially of a very young age, we're starting to see a lot of people comment on this sort of thing, and then the media's reacted to that. In the 90s you started seeing this talk come up, and then you started seeing the Disney princesses change a little bit. They went from passive vessels into being people who were proactive in their own sort of relationship building. People like Pocahontas and Mulan and Princess Jasmine. You see that change. And then they've taken it even further in their recent movies, right, with things like Frozen and Brave. Brave is an excellent example of doing the complete opposite of what Disneyfication normally does to the female component of the relationship. And I think that Frozen did a very good job of sort of mocking that idea that you fell in love with a guy that you just met. Like how can that be? How are you getting married to a guy that you've known for one day? Like, that's a bit unrealistic. I think that's one of the things that they did right in Frozen, right? Now look, I think I've often said that Beauty and the Beast I always thought was one of the better of the Disney romances, because both of the heroes, essentially both of the heroes, making sacrifices for each other and meeting each other in the middle, which doesn't happen in most of the Disney movies, right? But when you look at how that movie starts, that's actually pretty full on. That's a pretty scary movie, in the idea that, basically I'm gonna, eat your father unless you come and live with me. That's a really rough way to get a first date. Sometimes you're desperate and sometimes you need that, and I understand that, but, is that really a role model that we want to be sending out? How can this represent real relationships? If you've got this sort of stuff in the media, and Disney isn't the only one to do it, on the other hand, on the complete opposite side, you have DC Comics. DC Comics have, in their New 52, turned a lot of the characters into, sexually just wild characters, sort of under the guise of independence. There's a lot of talk about Starfire. She's the most overt one, right? But, even if you look at just all of them generically across the board, all their female characters have suddenly been given this much darker edge. The only one that sort of presents any sort of innocence about who they are would possibly be Dove from Hawk and Dove, and even then, there's a lot of things going on that makes her get manipulated by people because of that, right? And I think that's a very scary thing. These are the messages that we're sending, to the young people that are reading them, right? Whether they're young like my niece, who's only a few handful of years old, or whether they're older kids like the teenagers that I teach in my school, right? What kind of a message is this sending? How does this represent real relationships? How is this teaching them how to build a real relationship? It's saying, well, if you look at the Disney example, well, a girl is either gonna completely fall for you or completely not want anyone at all, and it's a really bipolar sort of situation. It's got polarity to it, and that's a scary thing to be presenting. And when you look at the way the comics are going, it's becoming about sexualization. Are women a piece of meat? And that's the mentality that's coming across. How are you building a strong relationship with that? How can you look up to someone who doesn't know how to build a relationship like that? Alright, so I've done a lot of whinging, a lot of ranting, fair enough. How do we solve this? How do we solve this is the next question. And then that poses, does it need to be solved? So, as I said, I've grown up with Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers and Batman and all sorts of violence, and there are a lot of studies in social science that say, kids need this violent play. They need to be able to get those, feelings out in a way that is playful. They need to see it in cartoons, and they need to see it in comics, and they need to see these things unfold with a fiction base, right? Is this something that is okay, or is this something that's not okay? Isn't really a question. It's more, is this who they should be looking up to, right? There are other role models out there apart from our fictional ones that we see in the media, right? Obviously, you've got things like sports stars, you've got the people around them. I think that's the most important one, is the people around them who are here to be the role models. We are the heroes our kids need. We are the ones who need to be helping them navigate the lessons that are being shown to them. It's about not just putting on the TV or giving them a book. It's about sitting down with them and working through the issues that come up with that and explaining to them, why is it funny that they're sort of joking with her that she just met a guy and now they're going to get engaged? Why is that funny? And talking with them about that. And that sounds really boring, but I think that's the important lesson here, right? So this video was a bit ranty, and I'm sure we're going to get into a better stream when I've got it back and forth. And this is the first video. So for Tony's question, what I'd like to ask you, Tony, is you're a little bit older than I am, right? So my question to you is society getting darker? I mean, we look at the fictional heroes that we've got, we look at the way they're portrayed. Is it darker now, or is it just something that I see looking back and think that that's the case, right? So that's my question to you people watching this on the internet. That's my question to Tony. And that's it for the first video. Please, leave any comments down the bottom. Don't be a troll. No one likes a troll, right? And I look forward to seeing your response, Tony.